Everyone here is going about their day with the exact same goal, ultimately to find happiness. They want to improve their lives in order to be more consistently happy. Everything we do is for the purpose of getting closer to that goal. But are we misguided? I'm traveling for a week here in France, and even this trip can be said to be a search for happiness. I'm looking for a little bit of adventure and fun. I'm going to a celebration with some friends, and we'll be exploring new places and shooting some videos along the way. But am I seeking happiness in all the wrong places? We know that as soon as we find happiness in one condition or circumstance, we're on to the next. We're constantly cycling between being dissatisfied and satisfied. A perpetual discontent with life is what keeps us going. So how do we find real, lasting happiness? As Rupert Spira says, the only possibility of lasting happiness is to identify with something lasting. We should look for it in something that actually withstands the test of time, or something that is ever present. But the problem is that mostly everything we can think of doesn't last. Any of our possessions, accomplishments, and relationships, they all change, fade, diminish, or eventually disappear. Speaking of relationships, I do so much better on Bumble here for some reason. But ultimately, I know that a new romantic relationship by itself won't make me happy.
Investing our happiness in anything outside of ourselves may always disappoint. But there's one thing that we can always count on, one thing that's permanent in our experience. As Rupert teaches, it's awareness itself, the pure awareness of our being, in which, out of which, and of which all our experiences arise. It's that sense of being or awareness before it's qualified by any experience or description. For example, it's my sense of self before I qualify it as a man that's 42 years old with a personal history, certain goals and desires, and specific life conditions. It's a sense of self before it's qualified with adjectives that describe any personality, traits, preferences, and memories. The only thing permanent and essential to our reality is our being itself, our sense of existence, our sense of I am, the core subjectivity that we all have. It's a sense of being, or being aware itself, and that's it. But if we really identify with just this core subjectivity, this pure awareness, would we have any motivation to act and pursue things in life? It seems like all of our pursuits are based on desires and behavior that come from a personal self that has certain preferences, dispositions, and conditioning. But according to Rupert's teachings, if we come to the realization of who we really are and consistently identify with it, with this pure awareness, it wouldn't cause us to stop pursuing things in life that we previously would have sought after for happiness. Instead, Rupert says that the motive for such pursuits will not come from a place of lack, but rather from a place of contentedness and completeness, and a desire to express and celebrate that sense of fulfillment.
What about when bad things happen? How do we remain happy even then? According to the teaching, if we introspect when bad things happen and we're feeling negative, we can see how the feeling is just a sensation. Feeling fear, anxiety, or sadness can be relegated to just a neutral sensation in the body. These emotions are supposed to compel us to act, but they don't have much substance if we don't let them compel us in this way. If I don't act on that feeling, it will naturally dissipate on its own. When we face those feelings, don't act on them, and investigate them, they naturally lose their grip over us, and they diminish. They lose their control over us, and they just don't persist. When we really investigate any feeling, or any thought for that matter, we can easily realize that none of them define who we really are. None of our thoughts and emotions are essential to who we really are because they're fleeting, they're fickle, and they constantly change and don't last. And yet our sense of self is lasting and unchanging. What we essentially are always remains undisturbed and unaffected by the constant flow of thoughts and emotions that come and go. Those thoughts and emotions that define us as vulnerable and limited selves that need to be defended and sustained is illusory. According to the non-dual teachings, we can see through the illusion to a source of ever-present contentment and fulfillment. Now, all this non-dual philosophy may be true, but I still feel that even when we're content and fulfilled, even if we're unconditionally happy, additional pursuits are still aimed at slightly incremental improvements of happiness, or at least additional instances of things that make us happy. I just don't see how we can get around the fact that everything we do is to make us happier than we already are, no matter how inspired the action is. I still don't get how it could be anything other than the fact that any actions we take in our personal lives are geared toward further happiness of the individual. So I don't know if I fully buy into Rupert's concept of celebrating our true nature as the motive for acting in this world. Yes, it can be seen as an expression of a baseline happiness, but maybe that's it. It may just be a continuation of the feeling of happiness from a stable base of unconditional happiness, the unconditional happiness of our true nature. By the way, I was just listening to a talk by Swami Savapriyananda called The Honey of Non-Duality. In it, he gives a rationale of why our true nature is unconditionally happy or blissful, the Ananda part of Sat-Chit-Ananda. And it's an argument that I haven't heard before. The text he quotes argues that the self is never a source of displeasure, and it's always something that we want to maintain above all else. He gives the evocative example of those who even want to commit suicide or are completely in despair about their lives. If their circumstances and conditions changed, if they no longer had the problems that afflicted them, they may still want to live. It's not living itself that's the issue. It's the suffering of their life conditions that's the issue.
As Swami Savapriyananda says in the talk, we like things, we want to keep things which give us happiness. So if we like ourselves and want to keep ourselves alive all the time, then it stands to reason we are always a source of happiness for ourselves. We all have an instinct and a will to survive. We want to exist. If we didn't exist in the first place, there wouldn't be any possibility for experience at all, let alone happy experiences. And being itself is the maximum source of happiness. The argument is that it's the maximum source because it's the original source of happiness. We want things because they make us happy. We love the things that make us happy, but we love ourselves most of all since we're the ones enjoying those things. As he says, what you love most of all is something that must give you maximum happiness. And what do we love most of all? It's of course ourselves. Before any experience of happiness, we have to exist in the first place. What we want most of all is to exist. That should be proof that what we want above all else in order to be happy is existence itself. So, pure existence, or pure being itself, is absolute happiness.
So how to find lasting happiness? By investing ourselves in the only thing that can ever bring ultimate happiness, not investing in any possessions, people, accomplishments, or circumstances, but instead to invest in that single underlying reality we all feel ourselves to be. Everything else will constantly change and disappoint us, but we can always take solace in that one unchanging reality of who we really are, especially when things get tough, like the distress I'm feeling with my uncertain future right now. Rupert teaches that instead of focusing on the thought of, I am fearful, stress the I am part of it, because the fear will pass and the I am will remain. The trick is being established in this felt understanding, as Rupert would call it, but while still pursuing what we prefer and desire from a more inspired and broader perspective. And for me, until I'm established in that, I'm still going to seek happiness in these more meager and temporary sources for now. Like and comment if this resonated with you, and subscribe below to follow me on my journey. See you tomorrow.